Hello, my little friends. Are you ready for a fun story about our friend David? Today, we're going to hear all about David's day at school. David is a very funny and playful boy, but sometimes he forgets to follow the rules. Let's find out what happens to him. Okay, get comfy and let's begin. David Goes to School by David Shannon. David was so excited to go to school. He ran through the halls like a race car. But before he could win the imaginary race, his teacher spotted him. No, David. No yelling, no pushing, no running in the halls. Oops. David tried to slow down, but his feet kept sliding everywhere, like he was on an ice rink. When he got to class, the teacher looked at him and said, "David, you're tardy." David plopped into his chair and said, "Good morning, teacher," with his big, toothy grin. David just shrugged. He had made a dramatic entrance after all. Once he was in class, did David sit quietly at his desk? Nope. He wiggled, he squirmed, and then he started wandering around like a curious little monkey. "Sit down, David," the teacher said. But sitting still? Boring. Then David thought, you know what would make class more fun? Gum. David started chewing, stretching, and popping his gum until the teacher noticed. The teacher frowned. "David, don't chew gum in class." He quickly swallowed it and whispered, "It's gone now." Next, it was time to answer questions. David shouted out the answers before raising his hand. "Pick me! Pick me!" he shouted, waving his arms around like he was on a roller coaster. The teacher said, "David, raise your hand first." Then came art time, and David was in heaven. David loved art. Paint, crayons, glitter, yes. But instead of keeping the paint on his paper, David decided the desk, the floor, and his friend's shirt needed a little extra color. "Ta-da! A masterpiece!" he exclaimed. "David, keep your hands to yourself," the teacher snapped. David just giggled. Back in the classroom, while everybody else was paying attention to the lesson, David was staring out the window. "Look at that cloud. It looks like a dinosaur," he said, completely ignoring the math problem on the board. "David, pay attention," the teacher called, but dinosaurs were much cooler than numbers. At lunchtime, David was so excited to eat that he skipped right ahead in line. "Wait your turn, David," the lunch lady said. But things got even messier when David and his friend decided to have a food fight. Spaghetti flew across the cafeteria, landing on the walls, the floor, and even the ceiling. "David, I don't care who started it," the teacher yelled. David smiled sheepishly, covered in tomato sauce. When recess ended, David didn't want to stop kicking his ball. "Just one more kick," he told himself. "David, Recess is over, the teacher called. David sighed and slowly walked back to class. During library time, David was laughing at his book and making silly noises, even though everyone else was reading quietly. "Shh, David," whispered the librarian. David grinned and whispered, not so quietly, "Sorry." David kept raising his hand over and over again to ask to go to the bathroom. "Teacher, I can't hold it any longer." The teacher groaned. "David, you just went." He zoomed to the bathroom like a rocket, leaving the teacher shaking her head. As the day came to an end, David grabbed a marker and drew pictures all over his desk. Spaceships, stars, and smiley faces. It was quite the masterpiece. "David, you've made a mess. You're staying after school to clean up." So, after everyone else went home, David stayed late, scrubbing the desks until they sparkled. And then something amazing happened. The teacher handed him a shiny gold star. "Good job, David," she said. David beamed with pride. "Yes, David, you can go home now." With a big grin on his face, David skipped all the way home. He thought, maybe tomorrow I'll follow the rules. Or maybe I'll have more fun. And that's the story of David's day at school. He learned some rules, broke a few, but in the end, he did his best and learned that following the rules makes everyone happy. His teacher, his friends, and even himself. So remember, kids, school is a place to learn and have fun, just like David. See you next time for another adventure.